Hey everybody, it's Doug Schauf with Remax Oceanside and MakeMaineYourHome.com. Today I sit down with Todd Gutner, a new Center Maine, and we talk about the weather in Maine. I get so many questions. Hey, what are the winters like up in Maine? What's the weather like up in Maine? And I thought, what a great person to talk to than a meteorologist at New Center Maine. Now, I'm going to warn you, when him and I did our Zoom meeting, my Zoom acted up a little bit and the video starts kind of a weird part of the beginning of the story. He's telling the story about how we got into doing weather and all that kind of stuff. So let's see what happens. Let's do this.
Back then, there were like two channels that I would flip between. It was ESPN and it was the Weather Channel, and it was the ESPN and the Weather Channel back and forth through like the rest of my childhood. Ironically, like in high school, I wasn't exposed to weather until my freshman year of high school in Earth Space Science or Earth Science class, and we just did like a couple of weeks, introduction to meteorology. Nowadays, like I'm in the schools all the time, like in the elementary schools, and that they start the kids with exposure to weather very, very young, first grade, second grade, third grade.
Yeah,
I didn't have that as a kid, so I didn't really pick up on it until later on in high school. That weather was definitely on my list of things to do. I wasn't very strong at reading and writing. I was really strong at math and science, and meteorology is all math and science. It's all physics. It's all chemistry. It's all calculus. I gave myself one option going into college. I got into North Carolina State for my college in October. I applied early, and I kind of just kicked back and put it on cruise control for the rest of my senior year of high school. And I went down to North Carolina State for a year, and then I transferred up to the SUNY system in Oneonta. So I was down there for a year, and it was kind of a culture shock for me going to North Carolina. It was definitely different.
different down there. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. My first semester, I think I would have been homesick no matter where I was. It was just that for the first time in my life, I left home and left my parents and everything. So it could have been like Central Connecticut State, and I probably still would have been homesick. At the time, I didn't realize that, and I still sent out transfer applications and made the move, but didn't have any regrets when I went to Oneonta. It was a blast. Got to play soccer again. Meteorology was really, it was great because their program is super small. Like I graduated with only 2 other kids.
Oh, neat.
It was a tiny program. So it was really hands-on. We had 2 professors, and, every class was no more than like 5 students in it. So it was very hands-on, learned a lot, and had a great experience. And
nice.
So it was that's kind of how I got the interest in weather and meteorology. Never thought I would go on TV, by the way. Like that was the last thing on my mind. I thought I'd work for the National Weather Service or continue on for graduate school and maybe teach something, maybe private sector. I never entertained the thought of going on television. And it was later on when I attempted grad school and dropped out, and was ready to take an entry-level position at Merrill Lynch because the stock market was booming in the late 1990s. And I was living out in San Francisco, and I almost took an entry-level job at Merrill. Instead, my mom talked me out of it and said, you need to exhaust every avenue, in weather and pursue the TV part of it. So I took an internship, and that's how I kind of got into weather and on TV. Yeah.
Oh, neat. Yeah, that's interesting. It's funny when I think of meteorology, I think of just the guys on TV, of course.
Yeah. But there's a whole other,
there's a whole behind the scenes thing, I'm sure.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, there are, every airline has a staff of meteorologists. UPS, FedEx, they do, because they need to, be strategic with, where they're routing their planes and their trucks and how they're getting their cargo all over the place. Every utility company has them. I mean, there's a huge private sector contingent of meteorologists. Yeah.
Let's chat a little bit about Maine weather. Like I said, everybody asks me, hey, what's the weather like in Maine? I'm like, geez, we got all 4 seasons. That's about the extent of what I can do.
Yeah, no, but that's where you need to start, though. You need to start with 4 distinct seasons. The big players are definitely winter and summer. Winters here are long. They can be fierce. They don't seem to have the bite that they used to, at least as often as they used to.
Right.
In my lifetime. But,
I've noticed that too. It seems like over the last few years, like there hasn't been, too many major.
Yeah, we typically still get to our average snowfall. The thing is, it's tough keeping a snowpack nowadays. Like we tend to have these larger warm-ups or prolonged periods of warmer temperatures, and it just really chews away at any snowpack that we get. We're still getting storms, and yeah, they're mixing a little more and things like that, but there's still an abundance of storms where we can still meet our quota for snow. It's just keeping the snow. We had one really impressive winter though. It was my first winter back after being down in Boston, 2014, 2015, and specifically the latter half of it, 2015. It was like the last week of January, all of February, and the first week of March. We had about a 5 to 6 week stretch there. That was the most severe winter section I can remember in my lifetime. We picked up like 70 inches of snow in like 40 days. The month of February was the second coldest on record, and records go back to like the 1800s.
Yeah.
We went above freezing one time that month of February, and it was 33 degrees. So there was no melting at all. The snowbanks were as high as the street signs.
Yeah.
And it was all pure powder. Like it was so cold. There was no mixing. There was nothing wet about it. It was pure powder. So it will always live with me, that winter of 2014, 2015. That was one crazy winter. But they just, since then, we haven't really had one that severe. We've had bouts of cold that intense, and we've had, above average snowfall, but we've also had these significant warm-ups, and keeping that snow around, and a lot of Maine's economy depends on it. In the winter months has been really, really tough. So that's been a struggle. But that's what I first start with when I talk about Maine weather, is that it's 4 distinct seasons. Right. And you've got to be open to winters. And when I say that, I mean, you need to embrace them. Yeah. If you don't embrace them, they're going to swallow you up, and you're going to hate living here. You really are. It'll either slowly eat away at you, or you'll immediately want to leave. One of the two.
That's so true. I know some people that kind of almost go on like a depression for,
absolutely,
or whatever. And it's like, yeah, I agree. You gotta get into something. You gotta ski. You gotta ice skate. You gotta do something. You gotta have some fun.
Yeah, we made that mistake. Our first stint here was 2000 to 2007. My wife and I was pre-kids. And we made that. I mean, it's not like we didn't grow up in winters. We grew up in Connecticut. We had snow. I played ice hockey, growing up and all that, and skied a little bit as a kid. But when we were young adults, we didn't do those things, and we were miserable. And we kind of couldn't wait to get out of here. And when we left and went south, like, we thought we'd never come back. So when we did come back, we made it clear, like, we were going straight to Play It Again Sports and buying snowshoes and ice skates for starters, Yeah. And then, we as a family, we started skiing, and, the kids, they started at the age of 5, so they absorbed it so fast.
Yeah.
It was was more challenging.
Much quicker than us. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a little more challenging for my wife and for myself. But it's something that you look forward to in the winter months, and you need that to get by.
Right. Yeah.
You really do.
How have you seen like the different areas of Maine? I mean, obviously it's kind of interesting to me sometimes where, like, along the coastal towns, I live in Cape Elizabeth, and it's like, it seems like the snowstorms aren't as severe as even just like a 20-minute ride in.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's all about the Gulf of Maine. The Gulf of Maine, it's well documented now that it's one of, if not the fastest warming body of water on the planet. Mm-hmm. And that's playing a huge role in a lot of things, whether it's the aquaculture, the fish migration, the species, the lobstering, and the weather too. Years ago, our snow would stick around, and our snow storms seemed to have more of a punch. And, with a colder Gulf of Maine that's right next door to the coastline, any kind of infusion of that air over that water, would mean, that it would likely stay cold enough for snow, and that battle would be like on the islands or whatever. But as the Gulf of Maine warms, a lot of things are changing, and it's not just the ecosystem; it's our weather patterns too. We tend to get a lot of mixing storms, and that doesn't mean every single one of them is. The perfect track still exists, and the cold in Canada still exists, and it all comes together a lot of times still. But in general, with that warmer Gulf of Maine, anytime you get the wind to come in off of the Gulf of Maine, you're going to infuse milder air, milder than it used to be air.
Yeah.
So, you've got to go farther inland to get more of the pure snow.
Right.
And in the last, even though the coastline has had a tough time keeping the snowpack year over year, the mountains have done well, and thankfully they've been able to maintain, their general climate pattern. But this year is kind of sticking out for us right now, and there's not much of a snowpack up there.
Right.
And it's primarily due to the storm track, which has been more of a coastal track, if not south of us. There haven't been many that have gone like inland, like we have seen over the past several winters. So this is kind of an interesting storm path where a lot of the storms are missing us south this particular winter. So different. There's and in the summer, you can make the same distinctions. Along the coast, we get sea breezes all the time, and that's a cooling effect. I mean, the water in the Gulf of Maine, it takes a while to warm once spring arrives, and
I don't touch it until like August now.
There you go. Like
there's a kid, I jump in all the time.
Yeah, there's that quintessential moment. It's like August 21st at 2:30 in the afternoon, and you can go in then.
Yeah.
You can't. That's
only for a week. You only got like a week.
Totally. It's so true. That water is it's amazing. But when it does warm, and I gotta say, like these last handful of years, some of those water temperatures that the buoys have been reading, I didn't see in my first stint that I was up here. I never saw a 70+ Portland weather buoy, which is located a few miles off of Two Lights in Cape Elizabeth. Never would you see a temperature like that, or at least I didn't. I don't recall it. Right. And now it happens. Now it happens, and it happens, more than once a summer. It doesn't stick around long, but it happens, and that's just a testament to things that are changing.
That's happening. Yeah. No, that's great. No, I'm glad you kind of chatted about the summer, because I mean, summer does exist here in Maine, and it's beautiful. It is. Yeah. It is wonderful. Yeah.
It is. I mean, it's a special time of the year. People joke like that's why we live here, for that 1 week in August that we're referring to. But in actuality, like you have. I wouldn't classify June in there. Sometimes you get a good June, sometimes you don't.
Right.
Sometimes you get a good April, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get a good May, sometimes you don't. But you can count on July, and you can count on August, and you can count on September, I think, too. I group September into that book now, too.
It's funny you say that, because I've noticed that, I don't know why, for like the last 3 or 4 years, I've been like, as summer starts to approach the end, I'm always like, well, geez, September's going to be great, too. It always is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
September's, I think that's, if you're a Mainer, a true Mainer, September's got to be your favorite month, because first of all, the tourists are gone, right? And, the lines are not, we were talking earlier, like how, there aren't many lines, but there are some in the summertime. And if you grow up in Maine, like you're not used to that kind of thing. And, so all the tourists are gone. There's really zero traffic. Right. And the other thing is the humidity usually backs off by then too. So you're getting like cooler nights, and you're getting better sleeping weather, yet your days are still like 75 to 80 degrees. And the ocean is still exceptionally warm. It's usually the warmest it is all summer.
Yeah.
So
you're absolutely right.
Yeah. And the lakes stay warm too. So that's probably the best month month of the year.
Yeah. I got to agree with you there.
Yeah.
So let's see, before I get to that final question there. So nor'easters kind of come back to like storms and stuff like that.
Sure.
Me growing up in Buffalo, New York, everything was lake effect. That's all we talked about, my whole life. never heard of a nor'easter until I moved to Maine. And then everybody's just like, well, we're getting another nor'easter. You know? What? Talk to me about what nor'easter, like if somebody's like, I don't know what the heck that is. I mean, what are we talking about? What defines the
Well, you know, it should be called a northeaster.
Right.
But you know, the New England accent changed that, you know.
I love.
We dropped the R's or whatever, so now it's a nor'easter. You know,
nor'easter. That's one of the things I love about Maine is the difference.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it basically refers to the wind direction, where the wind is coming from, and it would be in a nor'easter or northeaster. It comes from the northeast. So what happens in a setup like that is there are a few ingredients that you need to get these nor'easters, these powerful cyclones that drop, you know, at times feet of snow across the state. And that's what New England winters are known for, nor'easters. You need a cold, high pressure center that's situated to our north, up in southern parts of Quebec in Canada, the provinces to our north. That's the cold air supply. You need the jet stream to dig pretty far south, at least down into the deep south, so that it can actually grab Gulf of Mexico moisture and guide it up the East Coast. And where those two interact, usually what happens is, if it were a perfect world, you'd have the high to the north and the low coming up from the south. And without any other forces involved, air will flow from high to low. So it will go like from north to south. So that would be like a north wind.
Right.
But because we have the earth turning and the Coriolis effect, it sort of turns it a little bit to the northeast. So that's how we get these winds out of the northeast. And that's what these powerful cyclones are famous for. Really strong, gusty northeast winds, and blinding snow, and the two combined can lead to blizzards.
Right. And
that's kind of you know, New England's coastal New England's history right there. You know, that's what we are famous for.
Right. You know, honestly, it almost sounds like the lake effect, just a different word. You know,
yeah, it is. It is. You know, there are different processes involved. Yeah. And I will say that, you know, the lake effect machine, when it is really humming and it's well oiled, is definitely more impressive than a nor'easter. You don't get the wind, you know, you don't get the wind with the lake effect as bad as you would with the nor'easter, but the snow amounts, oh my gosh. I mean, you can probably speak to that where.
Well, that's the funny thing. I remember moving up here to Maine, of course, like, you know, my Buffalo friends would be like, what are you doing there? The winter's got to be like awful up there. I was like, it's nothing up here. I mean, compared to what I grew up with, this is like, you know, going to Florida, for crying out loud.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, the nor'easters, they're kind of like a hurricane where they impact a lot of area, you know, like the entire state of Maine will be impacted by a nor'easter. Lake effect is more like a tornado. You know, it's insanely intense, more intense than the hurricane, but just much smaller scale. And doesn't take up, you know, I mean, it could, you know, that lake effect band could be 3 miles wide, and then on either side of it, there's like virtually no snow at all.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes like a little strip gets 6 feet of snow, and like everybody else is, you know.
So it's like the hurricane or the tornado, you know, pick your poison kind of thing.
Gotcha. That's a good way to look at it. Yeah. Well, hey, I appreciate that. So I had one final thing here. We'll see how this goes. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. We're going to
lovely
humor. So talking about Maine seasons. You know, there's a lot of funny things out there about like the seasons in Maine. I just wanted to see if you've heard of any, like we got 2 seasons, winter and mud season, you know, like those types of things. Have you heard any of those kicking around?
Maine is also famous for mud season. We kind of just, we go from winter to summer, and, you know, the spring here is usually junk, and it's referred to as mud season, you know. But there's also that saying that, you know, you don't, if you don't like the weather at this time in Maine, just wait a minute. You know, it's going to change.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
And I think everywhere across the country, they probably use that term, but really here in Maine, it applies.
It really does.
There aren't too many places in the United States where you truly get 4 distinct seasons. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Yeah. And ours all have, you know, these unique qualities to them that are just fascinating.
Yeah. No, that's a good one. I forgot about that. Just wait a minute.
Yeah,
you know, and it's funny, in like the spring and fall or whatever, you're like, as we're approaching each one of the seasons, it's like sometimes you wake up in the morning, it'll be snowing a little bit, and then it'll get up to like 60 degrees or something like that.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough, especially and you know, like I live with computer guidance. Like there are these massive supercomputers that help us see what's going to happen in the future. And during the shoulder seasons, like when we're transitioning from winter to spring or spring to summer, et cetera, that's when these computer models get confused the most. Yeah. So a lot of the time during those shoulder seasons and transition times, we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants, you know, like we're not autopilot at that point. And we're like, you know, like just biting our nails, like, okay, I hope this works out, because this that I'm looking at, this guidance is not guiding me in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, geez, that's something Maine should be proud of. Maine should be proud of that. We have a weather that breaks the computers a couple times.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Joe Cupo, who's, you know, an iconic and, you know, he was my mentor. He's part of Maine's weather history is what he is. He used to, he went to SUNY Albany, actually. He got a graduate degree from SUNY Albany in atmospheric sciences. And he was a teacher from it. So I think he was like a geography major or something as an undergrad, but he went back and got his weather degree. And I used to sit right next to him, looking over his shoulder, you know, just absorbing all of his knowledge. And he used to peek back over and be like, Todd, man cannot predict weather. It's always stuck with me. And it's the most humbling statement, and it's the truth.
Oh,
like,
I love it.
We're decent, you know, we're pretty good. Usually we're in the ballpark, but you know, then Mother Nature throws a curveball and puts us right back in our place.
Yeah. What are you going to do? Of course. Oh, that's funny. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, hey man, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. And
it was my pleasure.
Yeah, I really do appreciate it. And you know, all you viewers out there, if you have any comments or questions or anything like that, leave us a comment. And, and remember, if you're going to make Maine your home, you don't have to do it alone.
Really good. I'm very glad I took the rampers off.
I'm getting old.